It takes from, say, 15 to 20 years to demoralize a society.
People have given me a hearing without legal representation or anything.
Did you shoot the president?
I didn't shoot anybody, no, sir.
Pentagon officials reluctantly admitted to the New York Times 17 months ago that the military has secretly studied UFO incidents, in part so it might figure out the technology.
Well, whatever that means, sure, he's crazy as mad as a hatter. What difference does it make? You know, a long time ago, being crazy meant something. Nowadays, everybody's crazy.
Welcome to the Conspiracy Files. Yo, everybody, what's going on? Today is Sunday, March 29th, 2020. Fuck it, we'll do it live. Yeah, what is that, Bill O'Reilly? Did he do that? Yeah, he freaked out. Fuck it, we'll do it live. Coming at you live from my doomsday office bunker. You can probably hear my chickens. They'll be chirping. You can hear them for sure. So, as of today, March 29th, 2020, United States COVID-19 cases, 132,640, 2,352 deaths, 4,378 recovered. Seems like good numbers, but testing's not widely available, so we don't actually know the numbers. As of right now, New York is at just under 60,000 cases. New Jersey, second place with 11,124. California, 5,718. And rounding it off with the top 5, Michigan, 4,650. And Washington, 4,310. And you can cite that from worldometers.info/coronavirus/country/US/. There's your source if you want to check it out. You can see the growing numbers. I'm not sure how accurate it is. It seems to be pretty true. This is another update yet again. It's going to be relatively the same because the numbers are just going to keep growing, and there's a number of reasons why. And the main reason is because testing is becoming more widely available. The other reason is because people are being stupid and won't stay the fuck home. So if you're not staying the fuck home, then stay the fuck home. That's pretty easy. And I know the arguments, but I'm essential, I have to go. I understand that. But if you're not essential and you're not working, and you don't have to go to work, because a bird literally just flew into my window. That was cool. But if you're not essential and you are not required to be at work or required to offer life-saving services because of your job and your career choice, stay home. If you want to go outside and go to Walmart and hang out because you're bored, don't do it because you're stupid. So I don't care who you are. It's just dumb. You could be shedding the virus and you don't even know. So if you want to go outside and walk around your yard. If you don't have a yard, go outside and just stand there and stare at the sun. Because if you feel like you want to go to the store and walk around and get a bunch of people sick, you might as well just be staring at the sun. Because I feel like that'd be more productive. Because that only hurts you, and that doesn't hurt everybody else. So if you go blind by that, then you won't be able to see how to walk into the store. Kevin, you're an incel. Stop meowing. I'm recording a podcast. Children. That's my cat, Kevin. He's really fat. He's like fat like a loaf of bread. So this podcast is really growing. I appreciate you guys. That's all I'm going to say. I don't promote shit or lock anything behind a paywall because information should always be free. 5 o'clock today, the president is going to have another press conference and give us a briefing on how this COVID stuff is being handled. I'm of the contention that we have not handled it well from the get-go. We didn't handle it well from the start. We saw what China did. We saw what happened to Italy. We chose to let planes come in and out and in and out for the next couple of weeks. And we chose to let these cases explode. And unfortunately, our president called it a hoax at first, and now he changed his tune. So even though he called it a hoax, he did change his tune and he corrected his speech, which is cool. Also, Hillary Clinton's a fucking bitch, dude. She put out a tweet and shared a New York Times article, as reputable as they are, quotes, that says the U.S. now leads the world in confirmed coronavirus cases. And her caption to sharing said post was, "He did promise America first." Wow, dude. You're using a global pandemic to throw shade at our standing president because you lost and you're a sore loser. How shitty of a person are you? That's pretty shitty in my book. Not professional. And that explains to me why she lost. I'm glad she did. But sick burn, there's a burn in here. I'm looking for it right now. And it may have been deleted, but I screenshotted it. But Jack Posobiec responded to that tweet. And he said, "Not the first time you've laughed as Americans died." Holy shit. Not only is that the best burn, but it's true. My God. Sick burn, bro. Does it feel like to anybody else that we live in this alternate reality where everything that's happening is happening out of some shit like in GTA 5? Because that's what it feels like to me. It seems like life at this point is happening so rapidly and so much is coming at us at one time that it feels like we're living in a freaking video game. I feel like none of this makes sense, but all of it makes sense. And I also find it really funny that going back to Pizzagate, our first place loser Hillary Clinton sent New York hospital workers a bunch of pizza and said, "Thanks for all you do. And here's me telling you that I touch kids." And around the same time, an article comes out about the Pope, about the Pope, and says Pope Francis predicts he won't be Pope for long. And this was from March 13th. But he says he misses pizza. Huh. I bet he does. And he was quoted saying, "The only thing I'd like to do is be able to go out one day without anyone recognizing me and go get a pizza," he said while he laughed. I hope I'm not the only one who finds that odd, because that's pretty odd. I don't want to think things like Pizzagate are a real thing, but I'm pretty sure Pizzagate's a real thing. I don't know. I'm going to have to look more into it. I've been too busy with this coronavirus stuff, trying to figure out where it's all going, where we're going to spearhead it to, and what's happening with it. Everything's a big yikes. Everything's happening all at once. Q says all this stuff. If you listen to Q post, I don't really listen to Q posts. I never really got too excited about Q posts. I think some of the information's valid, but for the most part, when somebody like Q tells me to trust the process and trust your government through this time and do what they tell you to do, that's very disconcerting for me. That's a red flag in my mind. I don't trust my government. I want the least amount of government intervention as humanly possible. Maybe around this time when we need to isolate things and quarantine some stuff, sure. But, keep your government fingers out of my wallet. Keep your government fingers out of what I choose to do at my house, or what I would choose to put in my body, or what I would choose to practice if I practice any religion. It's none of your business, and you don't need to know, because you're the government, and you don't need to know. All you need to do is just make sure the borders are safe, but stay out of it. None of your beeswax. It's funny to me that you can look back on my previous episodes where I warned people time and time again about how bad things were going to get and how many cases there actually are in existence. And just like I said, just in the United States alone, there's 132,000 cases. There might as well be 1.3 million at this point in time. Because when we had our first couple hundred cases, I remember vividly explaining to people, don't be alarmed if there's 50,000 cases if there's 5,000. And if there's 50,000 cases, don't be surprised if there's 150,000. We're quickly approaching the 150,000 mark. And with 330 million people, don't be surprised if we're going to see 500,000 cases. When we see that number ramp up around estimations, let's see, March, April, May, June, or July, I think we'll hit that number or get really close. We'll hit 400,000 for sure. Don't be surprised, and don't panic, and don't freak out, because this is everywhere. It's in every home, it's in every store, it's in every workplace. It's everywhere we turn. And the lamestream media is going to use these numbers as a way to slight your president. Whether you like him or not, the truth is the truth, and they will use it as fuel to fuel the fire for their leftist agenda. Because that's what they do. They don't really do any real reporting anymore because people don't really watch the news. Even though they say, 3 million people watch us every day. That's counting all the TVs that they are under contract to leave on at airports, malls, large areas with vast amounts of people. Regardless, it's true. It's true, and it happens. And unfortunately, every asshole is looking to further their agenda when it comes to journalism, quote unquote. I don't really want to classify it as journalism anymore because all it is just hype in the hype in whatever way suits you best. Unfortunately. It's... I've made quote unquote predictions of things, and they're not really predictions. It's just things that have come true. Literally everything, 100% of the stuff that I've told you guys was going to happen has happened, and it will continue to happen because my information is good and comes from reputable, verified sources. I'll never give those sources out. But this is going to be way worse than what any of you still even think. And if you think that our country is going to be the same after this, after it's all said and done, you think we just reset and go back to how things were, even 3 months ago, then I'm afraid you're wrong, Buster. Because things are never going to be the same again. Things will never be the same again. Let me say that for you a third time because there's power in threes. Things will never be the same again. It's an unfortunate reality that we're going to have to accept because we'll be forced to. These large sweeping measures of power and authority are going to stay in place because they're effective. Unfortunately. We are learning that the large sweeping measures offer a factor of control that people in power seem to enjoy. Because what do people with power always want? More power. That will never change. It will always remain that people who have all the power want more power. It's a sad fact of reality, which is why you need to educate yourself and make sure that you're voting in the person that you believe is going to do the best job. And you vote in the best person for the job. You don't vote somebody in office in any level because of diversity and simply because of that. I don't care what color they are. I don't care what sex they want to represent. And I don't care how they want to present themselves. If they have my best interest in mind, I'll probably vote for them. Board diversity studies that got thrown into this fucking coronavirus relief bill, bailing out postal service workers, airlines, banks. I don't give two fucks about that. I care about the people. How are you going to help the people? How are you going to not give businesses more money? I get it. They have to stay in operation. I understand that. But banks thrive because the one reason banks are alive and the one reason banks have money is because of the interest that they charge on loans, on mortgages, and everything else. Banks exist solely because of interest. And if they're going to fail, then the economy is bad. So if you see your bank limiting transaction withdrawals, if you see your bank saying, sorry, we're out of hundreds, we're out of 50s, you can withdraw a limit of like $3,000, then you've got a problem. That means your bank is running out of money and they're trying to ration it and spread it out to everybody to make sure everybody gets a piece as long as they can. Once the banks are out of money, then the banks are out of money. Giving them more money won't stop the inflation. Giving them more money won't stop what's coming. If you want to keep the economy alive, keep the people alive who keep the economy alive. Some people complain that large businesses, large corporations have billions of dollars. It's not true. It is, but not in the sense in which you think. Some people tend to think that these large corporations and companies hoard all this money so they can buy like 6 houses and 13 cars. That's only a half truth. The CEO gets paid to be the CEO, and they get paid from whatever the business is doing and how well the business is doing, and they get a bonus based on growth. That all makes sense. And the CEO has a big job, and the CEO's job is to appease the shareholders. And if the CEO does said job well, the CEO will get said bonus, and the board will continue to keep the CEO employed. The CEO's position is there solely to appease the shareholders and people who hold the stock options. And once that CEO is not performing, that CEO will be voted to step down or will voluntarily step down. That doesn't go on to explain why the vast number of CEOs have been stepping down electively, all on their own, all in their own doing. And there's only one reason, really, why all of these CEOs have started to step down, why people like Bill Gates have stepped down and decided to go hide in their bunker, why the Queen left the castle to go hunker down in her fancy bunker. And it's because they knew it was coming. All of the CEOs who stepped down, when they did 2 months ago, sold their stocks that they held in their company as much as they could, and then dipped out. That should have been your first alarm to say, hey, because of the time that they did that, we were reporting this as not a big deal. None of this had happened yet. None of the large sweeping authoritarian rules and executive orders had come down. And then we started questioning why all these CEOs were stepping down. If you can't put two and two together there to understand that they didn't have the heads up and they didn't see what was happening, then I don't know what to tell you, because that was a pretty obvious signal. It's a pretty obvious sign. As soon as the CEO stepped down, I said, uh-oh, and I did some research. And I looked at how many people like Bob Iger and Bill Gates and the Queen all stepped down from their respective positions. Granted, the Queen didn't step down from her position, but she left the castle, which is enough of a clear sign to tell you what's going on. And they all vanished, and they all disappeared to their bunkers. And guess what? As soon as I saw that happen, I sold all my stocks that I had, which wasn't a lot, but it was enough, because I saw what was happening, and I knew exactly what was going to happen. And I said to myself, hey, this coronavirus thing is going to be no joke, because the CEOs got a heads up. It makes you wonder what people above them got a heads up on. But they all dropped out pretty dramatically quick within the same time frame of about 2 weeks. Very telling. There's a puzzle piece for you to put together. And then we finally shut down travel to certain specific countries. All the while, during these podcast episodes, I was saying, that's really stupid. We should shut down international travel on the whole to any country, anywhere, for at least 2 weeks, at least. Probably longer. We should have done that from the get-go. We should have not let any fucking planes come from any country to any airport. Domestic travel, sure. If cases started to grow, shut it down. Guess what? They shut the airlines down too little, too late. And then I believe the next thing I talked about in another previous episode was about localized travel only, and about how that was going to happen. And about a week later, it did. I'm not sitting here trying to toot my own horn and say, haha, I told you so. That's not what I'm doing. And what I'm hoping to do is to just inform the listeners and say, you know, if I tell you these things, it's for good reason. It's to give you guys the information that you need and the information that you're going to need to be able to make decisions to take care of yourselves. I have nothing but your best interest in mind, and your safety and your freedom in mind. And the things that I'm going to tell you here in a little bit in this podcast aren't going to be the nice things to hear, but they're necessary, and you need to hear them because it's going to help you. You don't have to do these things, but it's going to happen. And it's not fun. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be nice. Because, again, facts don't care about our feelings. The truth doesn't care whether you're happy or sad. The truth is the truth. And there are several people who I'm sure are going to listen to this and say, oh, it's not as bad as the flu. They're still going to be in denial. And, you know, that's fine if you want to be in that much denial. And at this point, if you're still in that denial point, I think you're a moron. I'm just going to say it. You're being a fucking moron, dude. On average, sure, the flu kills 40,000 people. I get it. But we have flu vaccines. We have ways to combat the flu. This is something that's totally new. And people will say, well, on the back of the Lysol bottles, it kills the coronavirus. True. It kills the original coronavirus that we discovered in 1963 as a thing that exists. This specific form, COVID-19, which is another strand of the coronavirus that's a branch off, we don't have anything to combat it. I believe there's the L strand and the S strand. One is far more aggressive than the other. I believe the L strand is the aggressive strand that's killing people. And I hope it doesn't spread, because you morons won't stay the fuck home. And I don't mean you morons as all of you listeners. I don't think you guys are stupid at all. Just the people who want to go out because they get bored. And at this point, that's the truth. If you want to go out and go to a public area because you're bored and want to get outside the house, you're a moron. Stay home. And I'm only telling you that because I think you need to hear it. That's definitely not what we want to hear, but it's what we need to hear. There are lots of people out here getting angry because people aren't staying home, and the virus keeps spreading and spreading and spreading and spreading because people won't stay home. What do you think the solution is? People move around and talk to each other and touch each other, and the virus spreads. What do you think you should do so it doesn't spread? Doesn't take a detective to figure that out, does it? Today's press conference, what I know is going to be talked about is basically everything in the game The Division coming true, which is New York's definitely going to be declared, at least in the game they call it the Dark Zone. But I don't want to use the term martial law. I want to stay away from that as much as I can. But if anybody does it first, it's going to be New York. And if it happens this week, I wouldn't be surprised, because there's 60,000 cases alone in New York. So I wouldn't be surprised if the president considers declaring martial law. I don't think that he'll do it. I think that what will happen is that the president will start this press conference today and slowly interject the words martial somewhere in conversation and law somewhere in conversation, and implant that in your subconscious for a while and ease it over on the people, because people scare easily. And it's going to be much easier to accomplish in New York and California and Chicago, because no guns. Even though there are guns, but no gun laws. A place like New York would be the first and best way to test out how this works. And if it's successful and it will stick, then it will stick for a really long time. I'm not telling you to rebel. I'm not telling you to do that. I'm not inciting anything. I'm not trying to fearmonger. It's just the truth. And just looking at the numbers, we're looking at about 6,000 to 7,000 new cases a day in New York, 900 deaths, 82 new in a 24-hour period. Active cases in New York, 54,000, almost 55,000. It's a hotspot. And that term is going to be thrown around by the president today and for a long time. And he's going to use the top 5 or 6 places. And those top 5 or 6 places are New York, New Jersey, California, Michigan, Washington, Massachusetts, Florida, Louisiana, Illinois. Those are going to be your identifiable hotspots, your hot zones. Also, Indianapolis, Indiana will be considered an emerging hot zone. And you're going to see the most densely populated places, capital cities, largest cities in the states, eventually be declared hot zones and slowly get locked down and locked out. This hasn't happened yet, but this will happen. Mark my words, this will happen. And like I said, I'm only telling you this because we need to hear it, because we need to act appropriately. And my source from Slovenia has mentioned today, and I'm going to read this word for word. Today at midnight, our country will restrict movement from one municipality to another. because of stupid people who take quarantine as vacations and went hiking or swimming. My source also told me that there's a big increase of heavy injuries because of adrenaline sports and bikes, and they can't handle everyone. So tomorrow, police will set roadblocks all across the country. We're not allowed to go beyond our municipality, which is approximately 96 kilometers squared. Not that big. That's the start. That's where it starts. Keep an eye on Italy. Keep an eye on Slovenia. Keep an eye on other countries on how they're doing things, because it's going to come here. We are going to monitor what other countries do. We are going to monitor how they conduct their business with dealing with this COVID. We are going to see who is most successful, and we are going to emulate that. We are going to shadow it, and we are going to mirror what they do. I'm going to give you another article from a news station. Governor Newsom gives Chief Justice broad powers during coronavirus. California Chief Justice, I don't even know how to pronounce this, Tani Kantil Sakoye, who was given unprecedented powers by Governor Newsom, voted with other judicial leaders Saturday to recommend that courts use remote hearings to get people out of overcrowded jails. This is a scary thing. During an emergency meeting of the Judicial Council, Kantil Sakoye said the lack of court hearings and the closure of state prisons to new inmates has left California's jails overcrowded and potentially unsafe conditions. She said she's received no assurance that jails in California are practicing social distancing because they can't. That inmates can be transported to courthouses with social distancing because you can't, or that courtrooms can practice it because they cannot. This is about making sure the courts are not vectors, she said. And the reason it's a catch-22 for the judicial system, and specifically prisons and jails, because when you get arrested, you willingly seize and give up your rights and freedoms of movement and various other freedoms I'm not going to go into detail with. And you are confined in a small space. And unfortunately in California, where they still have the 3-strike rule, you can get 2 felonies, and if you go out and steal a bike and cop your 3rd felony, you're doing life. Imagine how overcrowded their jails and prisons are, and why they would have to do these sweeping measures like this. Because it's out of control in California. California is nuts. California is wackadoodle. California is scary, man. For those of you who listen over there, I don't know how you guys deal with that, but letting inmates out with nonviolent crimes, letting current offenders out of your facility, if that's what you have to do, unfortunately you have to seek the best interest of the people, and you are liable for everything that happens in your facility, in your jail, in your prison, because you take control of this person and their effects and their property and the person and everything that they do. You're liable for their safety. You're liable for their protection. Everything. You're even liable for their health. And if their health is at risk, and you can't distance people because you have an overcrowded jail or an overcrowded prison, what other choice do you have? What are you supposed to do? Unfortunately, you have to relieve the pressure. You have to relieve the pressure of an overcrowded jail, of an overcrowded prison, and sadly, you're going to have to let people out. That's going to be a scary thing, especially in places like California, where people are just openly thieving and the police aren't policing. It's called a hot zone for more than one reason. And it's a hot zone because of the virus and the spread and how quickly it's spreading. But it's also a hot zone because the crime rates are going to skyrocket. The crime rates during pandemics will skyrocket because people will get hungry, people will get desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. And we know this because look at your gun sales. Even people who would never imagine having a gun are staring at the eventual safety and protection of their family, and they're saying, well, maybe we should get a gun. Because we all know what's going to happen. Maybe we're all too naive to admit or talk about it. But you shouldn't be. Times are hard, and you should talk about hard things openly. They're not fun to talk about, but situational things will be necessary to be talked about. What happens if somebody breaks into our house? What happens if somebody tries to rob us? What happens if looters come to our residence because they know we have food or money or medical supplies and they try to come and take it? What do we do, family? What do we do as a family? How many of you out there have talked about this? How many of you have talked about similar other things that are not fun to talk about? Hopefully a lot of you. Some people will still be naive and try to ignore what's at hand and what's coming. I think that's going to happen no matter what you do. But now is not the time to be naive. Now is not the time to ignore. Now is not the time to not talk about the important things. If you get sick and you go to the hospital, they're going to shy you away because you haven't traveled outside the country in the last 14 days, 21 days. We talk about testing, like if you feel like you need to get tested, go get a test. That's not going to happen, friends. That's not going to happen. Especially in New York. They will kick you out and they will tell you to quarantine yourself. And that's all they're going to tell you. And then they'll tell you if you don't have symptoms in 14 days, you don't have it. But we can't test you. It's not because we don't want to, it's because we're forced to not to. And we're forced to be limited on ventilators, we're forced to be limited on masks and supplies. Because we have to spread the wealth around 50 states, and there's not enough to go around. Do the math. If there are 330 million people in the United States, and we're only able to pump out 500,000 tests a month, how short are you going to be on supplies? Pretty damn short is the answer. And that's one of the facts that we just have to talk about, and it's one of the facts that we have to accept because it is a fact. And it is happening, and it's not fun. In small towns, you might not be as affected. You might not feel like things are affecting you. In small towns, in small non-progressive towns, in small non-progressive Midwest towns where things are done a little bit slower, people are going to try to resume normal behavior and want to go out to restaurants and want to go out and hang with their friends and want to have sleepovers, and you're all stupid. And you shouldn't do it. And if you're thinking about it because you're bored, stay the fuck home. Be bored. And the harsh fact is, be bored and stay alive. And that's a shitty thing to have to talk about. But I'll do it because it's in your best interest. You might not get affected by this virus, but your mom or your dad may, or your grandma or your grandpa. They may not have the immunity to it that you do. They may not be unaffected like you are, and you may be shedding the virus, and you want to go over and hang out and say hi and la-di-da instead of FaceTiming them. I get it. Don't do it. Don't risk somebody's life because you're bored. Is your boredom really worth risking somebody's life? No. Absolutely not. Come on, guys. We're better than this. I'm only talking about the people, I'm talking about a select group of people, not everybody. Of course, there are plenty of people staying home and being smart, and that's awesome. Thank you for doing what you're supposed to do. But to the people who aren't, once again, stay the fuck home, man. Be bored for a little bit. You're gonna be fine. If you gotta go outside and sit on the ground and breathe in some fresh air. Open a freaking window. Get some walkie-talkies. FaceTime your friends. Start a giant Zoom meeting. Do whatever you gotta do, man. Get creative. Get creative in your boredom. But I hope that after all of this, you guys begin to take this more seriously. I hope that you guys begin to pay attention what's happening behind the scenes of the virus, as far as the National Guard movement, the military movement, the Navy movement, specifically the Navy movement, and where they're going, where they're traveling to, and how active they are. I hope that you guys pay attention to these things. I'll fill you in on the next episode, more about that. And I'll get into the nitty-gritty with things that are transpiring across the globe behind the scenes. But I will tell you that if you feel like something's happening and you can't quite put your finger on it, you're right. If you feel like there's something going on more than the virus, you are correct. Give it time. All will be revealed. And you'll learn, and you'll know. Be prepared. Be safe. Please be safe. Be smart. I'm Zero. This is the Conspiracy Files. Take care of yourselves.